life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. I disagree with that. I think life is way harder than a marathon, man. I've done 100 milers and I had 16 different training runs that were over a marathon distance. Gary, I puked in 13 of them. It's like, not to gross anybody out, but hey, man, I mean, that's just part of the messy part of life.
Other people were quitting as you were going and saying, I'm not willing to do this. I'm not willing to throw up 16 times. And that's the bar of entry for success. Yeah, you can be at this level, but if you want to get up here, there's some things that you're going to have to go through, and you can think of those as checkpoints that allow you to get to the pleasure point, are those pains.
I'm going to die or I'm going to finish this race, man. Like, I don't care what happens. We're finishing this race.
Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Go. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want, but you can't grow if you don't have the right mindset. And today I have my cousin, Dr. Rob Bell, who's a sports psychology coach, and he's going to be talking about his book, I Can't Wait to Be Patient. I think this is a book that every entrepreneur should read, and we're going to be talking about a couple of things that I promise you that's going to impact your business. You're going to want to stay tuned for this one. All right, we are live, and this is going to be a special episode, a little bit different than what we normally do, but I think it's so important. It's such an important topic, and I get to do awesome things. I live an awesome life because I get to do awesome things, because I get to interview awesome people. And this is Dr. Rob Bell. Now, this is my cousin, and he's on the East Coast. And I'm really, really excited to talk with him because he's written many books. And I've read a couple of them. I haven't read all of his books, but the one that he just dropped recently, I Can't Wait to Be Patient. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, I guarantee you this book's going to speak to you, because I can't wait to be patient. That's one of my problems, is I want everything done now, and I want it done immediately, and I want all the benefits from that. And man, some of the examples that you give her in this are huge. You've probably noticed this before, but this podcast is unsponsored. What that means is we don't get paid to do it, but we want to bring you the best information possible. So how do we make sure that this content stays on the air? We need you to like and subscribe. Wherever you're at, whatever you're listening on, just give us a thumbs up or subscribe, and that helps us out so much. I know that you probably haven't done it, so I'm just going to sit here and wait until you do. 95% of our listeners have not subscribed to our podcast, so go ahead and do it now. Don't make this awkward. All right, good. Back to the show. And I love your perspective. So just to frame for the audience, your books are written from and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the way I'm wording this, from a sports psychologist background. That's how you help athletes level up their way that they think, because a lot of sports is mental. And, you know, in the dental industry, there's a lot of burnout. It's one of the highest, I don't know if you know this or not, but I know our audience does. It's one of the highest suicide rates. And here's the interesting thing. Men and women commit suicide at almost the same rate in the dental industry, which is fascinating because that's not true in other places but in dental industry, it's a male and a female thing. So it's this like high pressure, very tight. You're working in a small space, and a lot of that's to do with mental and the physical aspect. And one of the things that your book talked about, Dr. Rob, is that pain and pleasure are a package deal. Could you kind of break that down for me, like what that means and some of the illustrations that you used in your book?
Yeah, man. And I appreciate the intro, man. It's I had a couple questions for you as we get going here about dentists as well. But I mean, if you ever think about your kids, right? Like when those that are parents are out there, it's the most rewarding experience that there is, but it's also the hardest job that we have, right? So, I mean, that's at its basic level. I mean, there's pleasure, but there's going to be a lot of pain, a lot of growing points. I mean, if you think about, marriage, man, with your partner, I mean, yeah, it's the best ever, but it's also the hardest ever. So it's the same thing with life. It's like you have to be in the arena in order to have success. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there in order to have success, knowing that at the same time, you're still going to be criticized. And that's where like the pain part can come from. So in order to reach your ultimate, you have to be willing to go through that pain on the daily disciplines that you have to do. We don't call them small things in our house. We call them details. And you have to be an expert at the details. You have to master the details. And once you start mastering the details, that's when the little things start to add up. But those are really painful journeys along the way. And that's the only path in order to get like to the pleasure. Now you can have the simple pleasures in life, right? Like sitting and watching TV, but that's not the meaningful life. We're talking about the meaningful life that you get meaning out of helping other people. And that only comes through being able to suffer. And when you suffer, you have to find meaning in the suffering, knowing that it's tethered to a bigger why. And then when you start to go through that, then I always say this, like you get the test in life first and then you get the lessons afterwards. And then it's only being able to reflect and see, hey man, going through the really difficult times like that was what prepared me for success, but that was also the good stuff. And that's what I mean by pain and pleasure are a package deal, man. They definitely come hand in hand.
Yeah. And so often, entrepreneurs don't start a business, and dentists, a lot of the people listening to the show are entrepreneurs. They're also clinical, and they start it because it's like, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be fun. And it's true. It is, but not until you suffer a lot. And there's a ton of suffering that goes into that. Just like training. I know one of the things you train for an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that story? I think says a lot about you, but then also ties into this lesson here.
Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And sometimes I just forget things I'm talking about, kind of get on a rant. But I like doing ultra marathons. It's we've heard like life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Okay, I disagree with that, right? I think life is way harder than a marathon, man. And the reason why is because I've done 100 milers and training for a 100 miler. Like I had 16 different training runs that were over a marathon distance. And this is on trail, so life is way harder than that, man. And it, training for it, the discipline part isn't really that hard for me, right? It's like you set a goal of what you have and then here are the steps that you have to do. Like the discipline part isn't like people say, well, getting started is the hardest. I disagree with that. I do not agree with that. I think it's hard. But I don't think it's the hardest part. I think the hardest part is you get started, so the training is going okay, but then you have the setbacks, right? You have a run that goes horrible. You have your nutrition that's just not set up right. So out of 13 different of those out of those 16 different training runs that were over a marathon distance, Gary, I puked in 13 of them. So it's not like a big confidence builder, like getting ready for a 100 miler. You know what I mean? It's like, man, it's the heat. I couldn't get my hydration and nutrition down. And I would just, when you get dehydrated, man, that's what's going to happen. Everything's going to come up. So it's like, not to gross anybody out, but hey, man, that's just part of the messy part of life. So it's like, that didn't build a lot of confidence. So I'm going through these difficult times and you have to be able to go through that and then look at it and say, all right, man, what did I learn from that? Like, how was my hydration through that piece? Yeah, it was 86 degrees out. You got to double up the hydration, right? And it's like, so it's those pieces. So I think the really difficult part of life is when you have these setbacks, how do you still stay focused on your goal, knowing that there might be a different path I have to go, but the goal still stays there. That's the part that I look at. It's like when you have these setbacks, you have to realize it's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. And then when you have that as sort of your mental framework that, look, these are going to be roadblocks, obstacles, hurts, hangups, headaches that get in the way, but I have to stay committed to that goal. That becomes the most important part. And that's what I see as when things really hit a head, we give up. That's when we lose the confidence in ourselves. And that's the most important piece. And I can kind of elaborate on it, but that's where I look at, man, it's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. It's about making sure you stay attached to that long-term goal and long-term vision about what it is that you want to achieve.
I love that. Yeah, I heard an entrepreneur say one time that, and he was talking about his entrepreneurial journey, and he was talking about like starting these businesses, and he didn't have any money, so he'd literally sleep at the business to save money on rent. And he eventually grew out of that, and he made money. And he remembered thinking like, other people, that's the bar that other people are going to have to go through. So you knew that like you were training for this, but other people were quitting as you were going and saying, I'm not willing to do this. I'm not willing to throw up 16 times. I'm not willing to, hurt myself or to go through these different things. And that's the bar of entry for success. And it's true in entrepreneurship too. And it's true in the dental industry. It's like, yeah, you can be at this level, whatever this level is in your brain, but if you want to get up here, there's some things that you're going to have to go through, and you can think of those as checkpoints that allow you to get to the pleasure point. Are those pains, and it's a package deal. And I love that mindset. I love that. It helped me so much. Yeah, you got one.
Yeah, I mean, in the race itself, like I threw up in the race itself, and so I just relied on, look, this is not a big deal. I've thrown up 13 different times in these train runs. It's not a big deal. As long as my hydration is good, I'm still going to be okay. But I encountered like people in the race that they had already made up in their mind that they had quit. You know what I mean? Like they were kind of walking, you're passing them. Hey, how's it going? I've already made up in mind that they were done. I couldn't reach them. And the reason why is because my mindset going into that race was very, very simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's simple. And that's, I'm going to die or I'm going to finish this race, man. Like, I don't care what happens. We're finishing this race. And that was just sort of the mindset that develops throughout. And that Gandhi said this one, right? The harder you work, the tougher it is to surrender. The more effort you put into it, the tougher it is going to be when it's crunch time to say, yeah, you're right, not willing to do it.
I love
and that's
that.
why putting yourself through that gets you through it.
So here's an interesting spin on it though. So I'm thinking about the entrepreneur journey. You're excited at the beginning. You can do this in race. You can do this in sports. You can do this anywhere in life. So the beginning's fun. Oh, I'm going to get married. Oh, we're going to have kids. It's so exciting. And then the hard stuff comes. The throwing up, the kids not being able to sleep, and you not having any sleep. You start the business, you don't have money, you run out of money, now you have to take loans and you're not making any money and you don't know how you're going to pay those back. All of that's scary. So that's all the pain part, right? And then you do that at multiple levels. And so you continue to go, you decide not to quit, or I'd rather die than quit. Right. Or die than surrender. So then you're just pushing through it. You're going to make it through it. Makes you tougher. Here's where the trap comes though. Is you feel empty after the big win. So you get to the end, you win the championship, you reach the goal, you made the $1 million, your kid is all grown up and they're, a great kid. And then but then you have this empty feeling because you got to the end of the big win and it's not what you thought. Right. And I would love your thoughts on that because here's how I've worked around this. My job as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as whatever I'm doing my job is to enjoy the journey. And there's going to be parts I don't enjoy, but I got to get to that next part that I do enjoy and work through that. And I don't necessarily look at it as like, I'm just trying to get to this goal, even though I have goals, because I know once I get to that goal, I just have another goal. So if I win the race, it's just like, well, then I need to win 2 races next time. And so that's not really my life. And I used to be that way. My mindset was very much revolved around that, but it led to empty feelings at the end. And these entrepreneurs, I've seen it over and over and over again, including myself. We get to this next thing or we finish it and it's just not what we think it is. So can you break that down, how you kind of see that?
Yeah, I love it, man. And thanks for bringing that up. It's kind of like one of my favorite topics now too, so just watch whoever wins a national championship. I'll put it in sports parlance for a second, right? Whoever wins a national championship, whoever wins world championship, whatever. It's like, what happens after they win? Confetti hasn't even dropped. And whoever the news broadcast is going to be, they always sign it off the same way, Gary. They sign it off saying, can they repeat? Hey, can they do it again next year?
Yeah.
Or depending on where they are, hey, where do they rank in terms of all-time great? Like, it's already on to the next. It's on to the next. Like, and they haven't even left the locker room yet, man. So it's like, this is the way that our society and in media in particular operates, right? Is they want to sell you on this idea that that this is going to be the best feeling ever. So we got to look at the mountaintop. And this is what I call it the mountaintop fallacy. We climb the mountaintop. We know where it is that we want to go. We get to that mountaintop. And then what happens is we can't live up there. Like nothing lives up there. If you look at any of the really high mountains, no, you can't live up there. You have to come back down. So you can hang out there as much as you want, but you got to come back down off the mountain. And so whatever feeling that we have, whether it's that $6 million sale, we sell the business for $22 million, it doesn't really matter the amount. You've got to come back down off that. And what you realize then is like, so people, let's look at Mount Everest. People spend months climbing Mount Everest, and they're at the top of Mount Everest for a matter of minutes. They got to come back down. And then when do most deaths happen? They happen on the way back down because look, we reached the goal, man, we got it. And then mistakes happen. So it's the same exact way. No matter how great that feeling is, it's going to wear off. And if we're just looking for that mountaintop moment to satisfy us, to fulfill us forever, it's going to be empty. And too often, I think we go in that, we're like, that's all we focus on is that mountaintop. And we kind of internalize it. We're like, once I reach that, life is going to be great. I'm going to be fulfilled. There's not going to be any problems. And that's the lie. Like, that's absolutely the lie. So what we have to do is you have to make sure you're enjoying the journey that you want to be on, because no matter how great it's going to be, that feeling of what's next or now what kicks in. And I don't care if it's a gold medal you win at the Olympics, man. I've talked with gold medalists who have flown back saying, man, it's an incredible feeling. I thought it might feel a little different. And now what? What do I do now? Their whole identity was wrapped up in that. And now what they have to rely on is the pats on the back from the other people telling them, oh, great job, great job. Well, that kind of fades as well, man. Mm-hmm. And so it's when you're the best, you're not the best for very long, and you cannot live up on that mountaintop. You got to come back down. So then what really matters is the journey that you're going to be on, knowing that, hey, there's going to be a lot of false summits along the way, but you just got to be looking at, man, am I enjoying what I'm doing? Because if all I'm looking at is the exit or the out, it's not going to be enough. And then I'm going to rely on something else, and something else is going to have to fulfill that. Yeah. And that becomes like the mountaintop fallacy, man.
Yeah, I love that so much. And the way your book broke it down really helped me understand it, but it is something that I've been working on for a long time. And it's probably the thing that makes me the most happiest in working is that I'm really focusing on doing the things that I love to do, and they make me happy. And it's really that simple. And it's like, yeah, I still have goals. Sometimes people hear me say that and they're like, you don't have goals, or you're not trying to grow. Of course I am. Of course we have the next summit. Always. Like, that's part of it. Otherwise I'm just running around randomly. But it just brings so much joy. One of the things that I did was I took a piece of paper and I drew a line down the middle of it. And each day for like a week, I just wrote the things that I love doing on one side and the things I hated doing on the other side. And after that week, I was like, I don't want to do these things on the left side. I'm going to actually take those, and I'm going to find somebody else who loves to do those, like loves it. And because I hate it. And it literally solved a lot of my mental problems about like, man, feeling burnt out or not wanting to do this anymore, or what kind of, whatever other things that go through mentally. And this is true in sports too. Like, what things, at times we have to do things that we don't like, but if you have an end goal, right? Like, okay, I'm only going to have to do this a little bit longer, or I'm going to get help with this, or we're going to bring in somebody else who can help. It just helps free up mental space. Another thing
and that's why a lot, Gary, you got to find meaning in that suffering. I'm not saying like I think there's probably like 10% of the things that we have to do. Like, we just absolutely hate them and we have to be able to do it. We can outsource these other parts, but there's going to be that part that we just don't like doing. Right. And it's, you got to find meaning in the suffering, because if you find meaning in the suffering, there will be meaning in the outcome more, and that's the part that we just kind of disconnect with, man. Like, we're just looking for that, that great feeling when it's really, man, when you are really going through tough times.
Well, let me give you an example of that in business, and I would love your thoughts on it. So, like, an example for me looking back on that and going through those things and doing things for a long period of time that I didn't enjoy doing. I didn't even, at the beginning, I did enjoy doing them, but then I was like, I don't want to keep doing this over and over and over again. And the meaning in that was, now I could identify that I didn't want to do these long term, and I could also identify somebody who's good at them. In the past, I wouldn't even have been able to find somebody who was good at them because I didn't even know what they were. Is that kind of what you mean, or is it a little bit deeper than that?
No, for sure, man. I mean, that we get the test first, and then we're going to get the lesson afterwards. School isn't like that. School, you don't show up and take the final exam, but that's how it is with this, right? I mean, you can start going down this and you're like, man, I'm not really good at this, and this doesn't fulfill me. That's a lesson then that you get where you wouldn't know it unless you're going through it at that time.
I love this stuff, man. So many other things that we could talk about. I I want to point people in the right direction. So number one, I really recommend this book. I can't wait to be patient, and the fastest way to get there. So this is a really good book by Dr. Rob Bell. But if someone wants to connect with you and learn more about your mental toughness, or they just want to check out your book or get some of your free resources, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, man. My website, it's drrobbell.com. So DRROBBELL.com. And just right there, man, we've got all the books, all the blog posts, my podcasts on there, but we have a free resource, just your daily focus roadmap, right? Like, what are the daily disciplines you have to do, and how is that setting you up for more longer term success? And that's a roadmap. I mean, people can just enter the email address there, man, and get that. And I love just providing value to people, man. Anybody that comes to me, I always say this, like, anybody that comes to me, like, you're hungry, like, I want to get you fed. No question, we want to get you fed. Now, what meal you want to pick, right? Now, that's up to you, man. Like, do you just want like the apples, right? Or the Happy Meal, or do you really want like the steak dinner piece? So either way, anybody that comes to me, man, like, you're going to get fed. So that's just a way we try to like offer value to people.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. You did a great job, and great topics. And I'll definitely.
We're just getting started, man.
I know. What is here? We keep these shorter, like they're car length. But here's the thing: I would love to bring you back on. I ask why I'm recording because it makes it easier for people to say yes to me. I would love to bring you back on and have like a longer conversation, so we can block out more time and have like an hour-long conversation rather than a 20-minute conversation about this stuff. If you're okay with it,
but it's beautiful, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend.